Hey guys, it's TheFrXion here, Tiger Tank 12, haven't called me, I don't really care. Welcome back to World of Tanks, where we're today reviewing the Object 777 version 2. Now, a very quick disclaimer, I don't have all of the modules fully unlocked. I do have played a lot of games in this tank, well, not a lot, but I've played enough games in the tank to know what it's all about. I'm making this review right now because I know that the patch 1.17 will drop in a couple of weeks, and every single time my replays will not be playable again on the replay manager. So I'm just gonna do it right now before I lose all of that stuff and I'll have to start over again. So forgive me if I don't have all of the field modifications, but I can go through them real quick with you guys just to say or tell you guys what I would kind of pick. Also, my crew is not the very best, but that hasn't hindered my ability to play this tank. And I thought that I would just go with a crew that is kind of randomly selected, because this is a premium tank in quotes, because it doesn't earn premium currency or credits, but you can still put any crew member on it. So I just have a couple of guys in there that I want to train, and they are not like at all synced up. We don't have brothers in arms in the driver and the commander, or the shooter, the gunner and the commander, and everything else is basically just drawn together. So where do we start? We have a 122mm gun, which is very similar or almost identical to the IS-4's gun. 258mm of penetration, you get an AP shell and a heat shell. Both have very similar shell velocity of somewhere along the line of 900 meters per second. And the penetration is very nice on the AP shell with 258 and 340 with the premium shell. The high explosive shell doesn't sport that nice of penetration, 68mm of armor that you can go through. Shell velocity is identical to the AP shell, so I didn't really go for any or a lot of high explosive shells. That should suffice. You have more ammo than you have on the IS-4, you have more ammo than on the IS-6 or the IS-5, so that's a plus point, definitely. The rate of fire is decent, 5 rounds per minute with gun rammer class 1. You can see DPM is at 2201. I think you can work with that if you are using premium consumables. If you're using vents, you can up that even more, and if you have brothers in arms on the vehicle. So I highly suggest have a crew with brothers in arms. It's going to boost every little stat. Gun traverse speed is a little bit of an issue. This tank doesn't turn very quick. That means with the tracks and the turret, and you only have 6 degrees of gun depression or 18 degrees of gun elevation. Now the aim time and dispersion both are fine. They are Soviet, so you should not expect the most accurate of tanks, but with vertical stabilizer, it really is a lot more enjoyable. So that's an equipment piece I highly recommend. Moving on to survivability, this is where the tank really shines. 1,870 hit points, that should be enough at tier 9 in my opinion. 132mm at the front, 115 at the side, 45 at the rear. Because you have so much armor on the side of the armor, of the tank, and the upper plate is angled like in a very fun way, you can actually make a lot of players shoot your tracks if you wiggle around a little bit, and you'll be able to bounce a lot of shells. We can take a look at the armor profile afterwards in the replays that I've saved. This tank does bounce a lot of shells. 258 on the turret, 225 on the side, 90 at the rear. One of the main weak spots on the tanks is the turret with the cupolas on top. As soon as somebody is able to actually shoot down at them, where they have an angle, they can go right through them. With heat and premium shells, you have to be very careful with how you play the Object 777. Mobility wise, this tank is actually quite fast. It has decent mobility, great specific power to weight ratio, 15.96 tons horsepower per ton with the turbo. That allows you to really rev up your engine and accelerate fast enough. 44 kilometers top speed, I think you can get behind that, and 17 kilometers per hour in reverse. I really like the turbo on this tank, that is why I left it on, and I think I'm gonna keep it. This is the loadout that I really enjoy at the moment. Traverse speed, I've improved that with the field modification. I do have a little bit of less top speed, but because of the turbo, it is not too bad. Concealment and spotting both are not very good on this tank. Only 380 meters base view range. That's the best you can get on this tank. It's not the worst for Soviet tanks, but it's also not the best. So keep in mind, you're not going to be able to spot for yourself effectively, and you cannot stay hidden very well. Moving on to the field modifications real quickly. I went with lightweight suspension for better traverse speed. I would go for parallax adjustment for a smaller aim circle. And then right here, periscope or sound insulation. It depends. Do you hate getting stunned by artillery? Then I would go for sound insulation. If you really want to have more view range, I would go for periscope electric drive, but you would get 15% additional stun time. Then finally here, I would personally go for firepower because the mobility slot right now is not needed. I think the tank accelerates quickly enough and the tank works out just perfectly fine for me. But with firepower, I can get more DPM out of my vehicle. I would still use the rammer in the second slot, and I think I would be just fine. Then finally, this is the hardest option for me. Now, if you don't have the mobility slot equipped with anything, or if you don't have the turbo on this vehicle, I would probably go with the power supply rewiring setup 1. You do lose the gun traverse speed though, and it goes down by a whopping 2 degrees per second, which is quite a lot. But your tank will be faster, and it is as if you had a turbo on this vehicle. So that's pretty damn nice. You do not have the additional specific power to weight ratio like the plus 1.1, but you would get the additional 4 kilometers per hour top speed. Now, if you have the turbo, what you can do is you can go with power supply rewiring, and you can get the gun traverse speed increase and better aim time. Personally speaking, I would probably go for setup 2, or maybe even skip it completely because I'm just very happy with the way that the tank is set up at the moment. Now let's talk about the equipment real quick. I think turbo is a really nice thing on this tank. I enjoyed it a lot. Vertical stabilizer is something I would really recommend because you don't have to worry about the aim time. The accuracy obviously is not the best, but the aim time, even since you're in close quarter combat, shouldn't be too important. But everything works out very nicely with the vertical stabilizer. And then finally the gun rammer, which gives you better DPM. That's what I would set up my Object 777 version 2 with. And I would say we jump into some games and we look at what the tank is capable of in the game. Okay, so first gameplay we are playing on Fjords, and you guys probably already know where I'm going. This is a map where I do usually play the middle part, and that is no exception in the Object 777. One of the cool things about this tank is that the mobility is good enough to actually get you to that spot quite quickly in comparison to some other heavy tanks. That is why it's actually a viable spot if you could actually drive. As you can see, I'm probably going to be a menace on society whenever I'm going to be on the road because I just cannot drive in World of Tanks for the love of it. But this is a spot that requires quite a bit of work, and you have to be very cautious to make this one work when you're in a medium tank. In a heavy tank such as the Object 777, I always forget the last 7, it actually is a bit easier because you have much more armor than most of the other medium tanks that sit here. And we should be able to bounce quite a lot of incoming shells, especially if we can hide our lower plate. Now, unfortunately, the gun depression is just not good enough. It's a Soviet tank, so it is going to be a bit of an awkward shuffling that's going to go around for us to actually get some shots into these targets, but it still is worth it. because right here we can do some serious damage to the enemy team. The only issue is we actually have tanks on A8. They can just shoot up in here. We have a lot of tanks down there, so there's a very limited amount of places where we can actually hide. And we have to be extremely wary of these tanks that might just be able to dodge or throw some shells in from the side. So I'm kind of worried about here moving forward, but at the same time I really want to get some shots into the VK100 because he's in a position where he just cannot win. So I'm trying to work out the gun depression. I'm so close, but it's not working. But as you can see, we managed to just get it in there. And the very beautiful thing about this gun is that it's just so reliable. This is the IS-4 gun, this is the T10 Top Gun, and it's a very old and reliable gun that just always works. Does that 440 alpha damage, so you get very nice rolls. And in no short time, or in a very short time, only about 3 minutes into the game, we're already at 2000 damage. And we've basically taken up residence in the middle where we have actually become quite an annoying little nuisance for the enemy team because they cannot get us out of this position, and the only thing we have to wait for is our team to push the south or the enemy team to actually make a move on the A8 line or the B line, so that we have to reposition. But at the moment, so far so good. We're doing pretty fine. There's a Tiger 2 who keeps evading our shots, but we want to actually first knock out the T95 if that is possible, because it's a much more dangerous tank. And now I'm thinking about maybe going into the dip. If I go into the dip, I might just be able to have a bit of a bigger impact on these guys, and because our armor is just good enough, we can just basically clean up there. We have a very nice shot on the T95, but we take two very unnecessary shots by the Skoda T50. He goes right through our upper plate with the angle that he has, and now we're at 666 HP. But this is a very important part because we need to put some pressure on these guys, because it looks like the south is not holding up very well, or at least HP wise. We are all on very equal footing, at least both the teams right now. So I wanted to hit the Skoda T50, and it's very rare that you bounce off that tank, but I didn't take enough time to really put the shot into his hull. But unfortunately for me, I bounced right there. But this shot is not going to bounce. I'm going to punish him. I'm going to use my big repair kit, which comes in for free. So got to promote that real fast. This is like the special thing about these tanks, these reward tier 9s, that you always get like a premium consumable for free that you don't have to charge, which is really nice. And I mean, if you have it, why not use it? So right now it's still a bit of an awkward situation because I don't want to lose any more HP to this Tiger 2, but unfortunately this Tiger 2 knows exactly what he's doing. But you can actually see the armor working in your favor. Now this is why this tank is, in my opinion, such a very nice tank to play, because the armor is just very reliable against other tier 9 tanks. The only big problem that you have is actually on the turret. You can see that the cupola, if something is above you, they are going to be able to actually hit those weak spots and do damage to you. That's something you have to keep in mind and you have to get used to. But I still think it's nice because it kind of balances things out. The armor is still like perfectly fine. It's just that the enemy team now has a little bit of a chance of dealing some damage to you. Finally, the Tiger 2 gets punished for his aggressiveness, and we can just kind of sit here and wait for the Tiger 2 to make a move. I'm still waiting for him to make a mistake and come out of cover. The Xiaofu 24 actually makes the mistake first. He gets out of cover and gets absolutely blasted, and we get annihilated by the Stützwagen S1. Now, I just want to take that moment to talk a little bit about the armor. The armor is fairly good, especially if you're angling your tank around. And I want to take that and go into a gameplay where the action is rather short, but you can actually see just how good the armor can work if you can keep or make players shoot into your side armor, because 150 millimeters is basically an auto bounce in a lot of situations, and it takes a huge caliber to overmatch that. And yeah, it's pretty difficult, and a lot of players fall for the trick when you do angle your armor a little bit, that they shoot your side and it actually just bounces off. So let's jump to that gameplay, and then I'm going to have the final verdict on the vehicle, because I think the Object 777 is rather nice. Okay, turns out I was looking at the wrong gameplay once again, but this time around I wanted to show off the armor, and the other gameplay did show off the armor quite nicely, but I thought that this gameplay actually is better, because I rewatched it and I think this gameplay really shows off that this tank is not a tank that doesn't have any armor. It actually has some very decent armor and some very trollish parts as well. We're playing on Cliff. Somehow this map has been getting into my rotation very often in the last couple of weeks, and a lot of my replays are on Cliff or on Fisherman's Bay, or the other one map where you can play the middle with the little hill. It's not Mines. It's what is it called? It's the Swedish map, Fjords. Maybe it's Fjords. I'm not really sure if it's called Fjord. But right now we're playing on Cliff, and I'm going to support this M48 and the Tortoise in the defense of the 1-2 line, because you can see we already have quite a few guys moving in here, and you need to have somebody here defending this line. And you can see we're spawning several tanks. Nothing is working in our favor. We just bounced a shot from the Foch 155 and the T30, but this is a place where we do not want to be. We just spotted E100, we spotted Object 268, and you can still see that the accuracy on this tank, even though it's fine, I think that most of the time in close quarter situations it works just fine. In these little longer engagements, you notice it's a Soviet gun. 0.4 accuracy, that is not very good, but you can get it down with the field modifications all the way to probably 0.37 with Brothers in Arms as well. So if you cannot stand the bad accuracy of Soviet tanks, which I think they aren't even that bad, to be fair, you can always reduce it with some field modifications and with a little bit of help of equipment. So it's a bit of an awkward situation. Our team is not doing very well. We just lost 2 tanks in the middle. They've basically taken control of the little hill here of the Acropolis, and we just spotted the Object 268 firing high explosive at us. And because there's an E100 coming around the corner, I'm using heat shells, and you can actually see how well the heat shells function. If you don't have an IS-4 or the T10, well, you don't know how good this gun is, but if you know either one of these tanks, if you've played one of them, you know just how reliable this old 122mm gun is. This E100 is really aggressive. He wants to get a shot into us. He hits our turret, and this is the second time he bounces with a heat shell. And it's probably has to do more with the fact that this E100 isn't really aiming correctly, but you can still see that even a misplaced heat shell, which has, I don't know, 300mm of penetration, is not going to be able to penetrate like the very well armored spots like the upper plate. We do take a big hit by the T30, and I'm not really sure where he managed to penetrate us, but it probably was the lower plate somewhere. It's like right in the middle. The Object 268 comes back, fires high explosive again. We bounce the E100 again on our tracks, and that's one of the main things you'll notice, that bouncing shots on your tracks is actually something that happens quite often. Unfortunately for us, we do not hit the turret on the E100. He misses our weak spot, and now it's all about killing this E100 and allowing us to survive. So we actually survived this situation. The E100 misses our turret. We bounce 2 other shots on our tracks on the T30 and the Foch 155, but it doesn't show up as bounced damage, because in the end these shots actually are, I mean, they're really badly placed. Who is going to be able to penetrate your your tracks from the front like that. And I have the feeling that these guys were just desperate to actually manage to hit us. This game is now very close. They've just majorly fucked up a huge push on the 1-2 line, which actually would have won them the game. But the Tortoise and the M48 and me, we have just managed to survive this corner, and I've bounced quite a lot of shells, and now we're able to go into the offensive. So, Foch 155, we put a nice one into his side armor, and now I'm kind of thinking I have to support this STB-1, but I'm making a mistake. I should have never attacked without any support. I know that this STB-1 is going to die if this Foch 155 is going to get his hands on him, but I have to be more cautious in this situation, because I'll have to think about, well, if I die too, we lose 2 tanks to the Foch 155 and the Object 430. But I was expecting the Foch 155 behind me to come in and help us, but it turns out the Foch 155 was reloading in that time, so he obviously wasn't able to help us, but he still managed to put a shell into the 430. So yeah, this game is now basically back on a very, very thin line, but it looks like our team has the advantage because we are controlling the most important parts of the map, and we have like crossfires on the other 2 remaining heavy tanks on F7. So unfortunately, yeah, I'm a bit salty. I told him he was supposed to be pushing when the other one was reloading. But it turns out he was reloading as well, and I didn't see that in chat, so yeah, it's probably my mistake in that situation that I didn't look into the chat. But still, we're gonna win this game, even though the Foch 155 gets squashed by his counterpart. But it's very funny. So this is the first time that I got ammo wrecked in the Object 777 version 2 in about 50 games. This tank doesn't get ammo wrecked often, so you don't have to worry about like a really bad ammo wreck, but it does get set on fire a couple of times. I've been set on fire twice, so maybe look that you have the fire extinguisher with you. And now finally we have the Concept 1B taking care of the last 3 remaining guys. Very powerful tank, which we're going to review in the future as well. So, what can I say about the Object 777 version 2? For who is this tank? I think it's a tank for anyone who likes Soviet heavy tanks. It doesn't change the playbook drastically. It basically still is a Soviet heavy tank, and it has all of the good features. It has a really good gun, it has decent mobility, it has great armor, and you know, it's gonna get you from point A to B in style and with enough speed for you to still have an impact on the game. I really like the Object 777 version 2, even though it's nothing special. And I've heard a lot of people complain that since it's nothing special, it's not worth it. But I think it's actually a pretty nice tank, especially if you do not know which tank to pick from the reward vehicles. I think the Object 777 version 2 is probably going to be a good choice, because in the end, the AE Phase 1 is a pretty good tank to choose. They're both easy to play, or easier to play than the Shah 204, or even the K91. Even the K91 is also quite a lot of fun, because it takes quite a bit of skill with some of these reward tanks. And the Object 777 version 2 is quite forgiving, as you could see with the armor layout, and it still punches like a nice tier 9 heavy tank. So overall, it's a great tank. It's a good tank to have in your garage. If you're looking for something more exotic, I think there are probably other options if you don't have them already. But if you think like you want to have a decent Soviet heavy tank, the Object 777 version 2 is not going to be disappointing you at all. It's a pretty cool tank. It's neat, it's fine, and there's nothing special about it, but that's just alright. So, hope you guys did enjoy this review. As always, comment, like, and subscribe, and see you on the next one. As I mentioned, the field modifications, unfortunately, I'm not able to fully upgrade it yet. But most of the time, it's really difficult to get all of the field modifications upgraded because of time constraint. I cannot play a single tank for 50 games if I want to make a review. So, like, obviously, I mean, I played a lot of the tanks for more than 50 games, but I cannot play it in one sitting for 50 games to get all of the field modifications. So I have to kind of improvise sometimes. And this time is just one of those times. So I hope you guys did enjoy, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Until then, have a good one.